you may find surprising and also interesting that foreign policy, one of the most influential, according to some experts, one of the most influential media outlets, analytical outlets in the West and the US, did a published article of a professor in politics, in politology of Rhode Island University, Nikolai Petro, about Ukraine and about situation of Russian speakers, about situation of Orthodox Christians in Ukraine, about Russian language, which is, well, very surprising, because you don't really see these type of articles in Western media outlets that often. You almost never see anything like that. But things are changing. Things are changing in the circles of ruling elites of the West, and I guess these ruling elites are beginning to prepare ground, not just for distancing themselves from Kiev regime, but also to distance themselves from inevitable failure of Kiev regime. And from now on, I believe these type of articles may become regular occasions in the Western media, and most likely in upcoming weeks and months we will probably see many articles in the Western media and possibly reports on Western mainstream TV stations about issue of not just Russian speakers have been suppressed in Ukraine, or Russian language or Orthodox Church, but also there will be programs most likely about influence of Nazis and Nazi ideology in Ukraine, and how bad situation really is, and how damaging for Ukraine and Ukraine's struggle, or for relationships between Ukraine and the Western capitals was these Nazi elements and Nazi influence in Ukraine. So that you will see that Western ruling elites, through their propaganda outlets, will just trash Ukraine full on. And this way they will justify not just not just the fact that they will distance themselves from this mess that they create in Ukraine, but also they will make no big deal from fail of Kiev regime. That's how it's gonna be in my understanding. But now let me share with you some more information about this particular article. I did translate this news, so let me read it if I may. For majority of our community, of course, it's gonna be nothing new, because I did spoke about these topics and write about it on my Telegram and report about it many times. But I'm quite sure vast majority in the West, vast majority of public in the West has no idea what's really going on in Ukraine. So that's why it is something new and interesting that major media outlet like Foreign Policy is begins to pay attention to this type of topics, and this is definitely not random stuff. So let's read it. In Ukraine, freedom of religion and the press is being curtailed, and the Russian-speaking population is being prosecuted, wrote Nikolai Petro, a political science professor at the University of Rhode Island, in an article entitled "Ukraine Has a Civil Rights Problem" for Foreign Policy magazine. According to author, in the post-Soviet Republic in the Ukraine, Russians are not considered the indigenous population of the country or even a national minority, so they cannot count on protection of their cultural heritage or language, which contradicts the 10th article of the country's constitution. Recently, the percentage of Ukrainians who call themselves and the Russians one people has fallen sharply, which is not surprising. Everybody is afraid in Ukraine, and if you conduct social study now, of course, vast majority will say that they have nothing to do with Russia. They may not even speak Russian, and they will try to speak in broken Ukrainian, because people are afraid. People are afraid, and the situation is really devastating in Ukraine in all regards. So, of course, vast majority, if you conduct survey, will say that them and Russians are not close people, are different, or stuff like that, which is quite understandable yet again because of the fear. Although in reality, vast majority of Ukrainians, of course, think that Ukrainians and Russians are brothers, because it is, man. It's a same world. It's the same Russian world, multicultural, multi-ethnic Russian world, and Ukrainians definitely are part of this world, undoubtedly. But let's continue. At the same time, the number of those who observe systematic discrimination against Russian speakers in Ukraine has increased, the professor noted, citing surveys conducted. The tensions surrounding minority rights will only worsen further after the end of conflict. I would not say that, because once this conflict will end, vast majority of Ukraine will become under Russian control. Only western regions of Ukraine most likely become under control of collective West or Western neighbors of the Ukraine, and on territories which will be controlled by Russia, rights of everybody will be protected for sure. All ethnic, religious minorities, like it is in Crimea, So people do have example. Let's continue. Since the beginning of conflict, religious freedoms in Ukraine has taken a turn for the worse for groups associated even symbolically with Russia. Thus, the Ukraine's Orthodox Church, which in Kiev is considered an agent of Russian influence, took the most serious blow in this prosecution. The political scientists emphasized, and of course all of you know, dear friends, that majority of you at least, that these neo-Nazis in Kiev regime basically authorized attacks on Ukraine's Orthodox Church. Many churches have been burned down and destroyed and attacked, and these criminals created their own some so-called church, which is not recognized with by majority Orthodox churches. Only Greek Orthodox Church recognize these Ukrainian criminals that call themselves like New Church or something like that. I don't even know what they call themselves, and I don't care. They committed unforgivable sin by religion standards. So, you know, I don't even want to talk about them, but of course, many of you know about these attacks on churches, Orthodox churches of Ukraine's Orthodox Church, which is a sister church to Russian Orthodox Church and associated, of course, with Russian Orthodox Church. All Orthodox churches, yet again, with the exception of Greek Orthodox Church, we talk a very different direction. Unfortunately, all other Orthodox churches are very close to each other, obviously. And, well, so this professor is absolutely correct. Orthodox Christians have been severely prosecuted in Ukraine, and churches have been destroyed, churches of Ukraine's Orthodox Church. And Petro, professor, saw a similar trend in the situation with the press freedom in Ukraine. And according to him, council created in March by Kiev regime can now study the content of all local media before publication and ban what it considers a threat to the nation and issue mandatory directives. And of course, this council will consider threat any information that is not in favor, not favorable for Zelensky and his criminal associates, isn't it? That's what is happening, and that's why there is no freedom of speech in Ukraine, and there is no basic human rights protected in Ukraine, and there is no democracy, or not even close to democracy system that is being created in Ukraine. What democracy are you talking about? It's a total tyranny of neo-Nazi criminals, and that's it, really. Neo-Nazi criminals, and basically they're Western masters who are using Ukraine to achieve some geopolitical goals. But, well, article itself, these small fragments, well, definitely highlights situation in Ukraine. And well, as I said in the beginning, fact itself that foreign policy did publish this type of article can be seen only as an indicator that Western ruling class begin not just preparing ground, not just to justify their distance from Kiev regime, but also inevitable failure of Kiev regime, because they will always have opportunity to say, you know what, they failed because they were acting wrong. There was a huge influence of Nazis, and you're going to see many articles about Nazis in Ukraine in upcoming weeks and months. I'm quite sure about it. They will say there was an issue of Nazis, issue of basic human rights. Kiev regime was acting inhumanely towards Russian speakers and other ethnic minorities. There was a huge corruption, and therefore Kiev regime failed, and for good. That's how Western ruling elites will try to, you know, come out from this situation. And ground have been prepared for that. And this article exactly part of it, because I will never believe that foreign policy published article, this type of article, randomly. This type of stuff is not happening, man. Not in the West.